Well, this summer seems to be moving a little bit quicker than people expected. One midfielder agreement pretty much there, and an offer maybe for that infamous centre forward. This is today's Arsenal News Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal News Show. Joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you so much as always for tuning in, for joining me. It is greatly appreciated. I hope you had a fantastic week so far. I hope it's been all good and well indeed. It's been all right on my end. Sunny weather, plenty of painting to do, and working yesterday, of course, as well. And now I get to chat to you all, which is great. As usual, good morning to those joining us live in the chat box. Thank you so much, as always, for doing so. Plenty of you in it. Mason, Carrie-Ann, Ken, Shane, Julian. We've got Rob and Natty Tom, Kahinde. We've got Rich and Matthew. We've got Julian and Martin and Mike and James and Gary. Good morning to you all. Really appreciate your time. Thank you for being here. This show is going to be in two parts, as usual. We're going to be running through the news in part one, and then we're going to do part two with a bit of a twist, which will be revealed a little bit later on. But without further ado, let's jump into part one and today's stories. Make sure you drop a like the video. Make sure you subscribe as well, if indeed you're inclined to do so, if you haven't done so already. And it's Lev Lavanja in the chat, of course, our former Arsenal Lounge colleague, and it's always about next season. We're going to talk a bit about that, I imagine, a little bit later on, Lev. But it's good to see you, mate. It's good to see you in the chat, and I hope you're doing well, my friend. Let's jump, though, to today's stories. Dean Huijsen targeted by Real Madrid as Arsenal are standing firm on Saliba. Indeed, there is plenty of interest in the Spanish international, and Real Madrid are considered to be one of the key suitors. But also, we know that William Saliba, and as revealed yesterday in Spanish media, that also Ibrahima Konate of Liverpool is said to be on the list of players that Real Madrid are keen on. Florian Pletterberg of Sky Germany also reporting this story that Arsenal and Liverpool are said to be still very much leading the race, it seems, for Dean Huijsen. So there's a kind of few conflicting reports around here at the moment about the Spanish international defender, who, of course, has been linked quite heavily with a move to Arsenal. But it would be, I think, a little bit strange if this was to happen, simply because if you're a 19-year-old, you want to be playing. You're already playing regularly for Bournemouth. If you move to Arsenal, are you going to get those minutes with Gabriel and Saliba already here? Calafiori, of course, here. Kivior, we don't know if he's going to be here next season, but for the moment, of course, he still is. So, yeah, that is definitely something I think that is going to cause some intrigue over the next couple of weeks or so. But yes, Dean Huijsen linked with Arsenal still relatively heavily as we look to go through a transfer window with yet more defenders that Arsenal will be looking to try and sign, it seems. But the big news that dropped yesterday, and our kind of main discussion point for our part one, with us entering kind of this phase of the season, if you like, where there's not loads going on, but there is still quite a lot happening quite earlier on for what stage of the window we are in, which is May. I only said June then, thinking it was so early, but May, still incredibly early, and Arsenal seem to be doing plenty. Viktor Gyokeres, a name I think we're going to be talking about a hell of a lot. In the Mirror yesterday, John Cross reporting the story that Arsenal are ready to offer Viktor Gyokeres a monster contract as transfer details emerge. And those details, of course, are that they've been told, Arsenal, that they can sign Viktor Gyokeres for £60 million, far less than the original £84 million release clause that is included in the Swedish international's contract. So it does look as though it's more of a reasonable deal. It could even be that Gyokeres ends up being slightly cheaper than what RB Leipzig might be expecting, of course, for Benjamin Sesko, how things change. And I think that does change the context as well. A £60 million deal, or I think 60 million euros has also been discussed, which is also just over 50 million, depending on where it settles. And of course, there is plenty of interest in Gyokeres, which could cause that price to rise if there is something of a bidding war between the clubs. But the key point of this is the offer that would need to be made is said to be around 7 million a year. This could be potentially as high as £200,000 per week that Arsenal might end up having to pay for the Swedish international. Now, as we know, his goal scoring record is incredibly regular. We are here with 95 goals in 100 games. And a lot of those are penalties, it's worth pointing out. But he is probably Europe's most consistent goal scorer at this stage. And he's done it not just for one season, but of course now for two. I think that for Gyokeres, if Arsenal are to land him, it's going to be incredibly high pressure, as we know, on a player that has got huge expectation. I mean, whoever comes into Arsenal, of course, to play the centre-forward position is going to have massive expectation upon their shoulders to be basically the guy that wins Arsenal a major trophy. That's the expectation around this position. Whoever Arsenal sign in this role has to come in effectively in their first season, take them to the title. If they don't, then there's going to be questions about if whether or not he was the right person to sign. And I think I've seen plenty of discussion on social media about whether or not Viktor Gyokeres is that player. I think I saw a Twitter post yesterday that went a little bit viral that effectively read along the lines of, if Arsenal sign Gyokeres, it's the end of the project. So there's quite a very vehemently against the idea. Quite a few of you seem to be very against the idea of signing the Swedish centre forward, a player I imagine we'll be talking more with you guys in part two and beyond. But it seems that the wage and the fee are looking a lot more reasonable. Less so the wage, £200,000 per week is a lot, but for a 26, turning 27-year-old centre forward in the Premier League at a club like Arsenal, you expect to be on that amount of money. But for £60 million, that's a figure that's a lot more reasonable. I think a lot many people thought it might be, and could open the door, of course, for Arsenal to spend more money elsewhere on other positions, as opposed to spending 120, 150 million pounds on Alexander Isak, for example. If that would even get it done, there's no guarantees of that. And it would stop Arsenal from, of course, spending in other areas that they have an interest in. We're going to go to part two now, which I did promise you comes with a little bit of a twist, which we'll introduce you right after this. Okay, this is part two of today's show, where we're going to be tackling, of course, your questions and some of your discussion thoughts in the comment section as usual. But it is today a slightly different part two. Reason being is, if you watched yesterday's stream, you would have noticed some, as we do always, have discussions with you in the chat box and throw up some of your comments. And I have what I like to describe as a trigger-happy block button on my right hand. And I feel when I look back over streams and I watch them back, I'm probably a little bit too rash at times. And I think, as you guys know, and those that have been listening to the channel for an awfully long time will know the level of trolling that sometimes we can get in our chat box. That means that we have grown that trigger-happy block button a little bit too harshly. And yesterday we had a discussion about Ethan Nwaneri and the rumours surrounding Ethan Nwaneri. And of course, one of the commenters that we had in our chat box was a man by the name of Halftime Hooks, who posted, of course, a message about the rumour that supposedly, of course, we have had no information to suggest this is true, but just the rumour that was going around that Ethan Nwaneri was supposedly turning up late to training, and that being a potential reason as to why he has not been used as often by Mikel Arteta. To which I took great offence. Probably too much offence to the question. And while I certainly stand by the idea that rumours and dangerous information being spread around without a source is certainly something that we need to be aware of, I think I probably went a little bit too hard. And a friend of mine, who is a mutual friend of us both, reached out to me, and I reached out back to them, of course, as well, about the stream that Halftime Hooks did, who I was completely unaware at the time was a content creator covering the Arsenal scene, one of the up-and-coming content creators who had I have known, not at all wanted to lambast them and put them into the same bracket as many of the other trolls that do jump in the chat box now and again. And in reflection, I recognised that I was too harsh. And to throw the olive branch out, after a little phone call that we had yesterday to kind of clear the air, I'm very happy to welcome Mr. Halftime Hooks onto this morning's show. How you doing, mate? You good? You well? How are you doing?
Yeah, man. I'm great. I feel like, ironically, I feel a bit like Ethan Nwaneri. I've been called up to the first team.
Have you been turning up late for training? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I did that. I'm there, an hour before everyone else. I finish an hour after everyone else. And finally getting my first team minutes. in the team. You know, finally made it off the bench. So yeah, you know, and just to prove to everybody, I'm a real person because I know
you're not faceless and you're not nameless.
Yeah, I exist. I exist in the real world. So yeah, and I'm not one of the enemy guys, so be easy on me here. Talk about Arsenal. But yeah, no, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. You know, like Tom said, we do have a mutual friend, someone that I respect really highly as well in that as well. So yeah, he was like, nah, can't have two of my guys like going at each other like this. Yeah, especially when we're both kind of similar in the sense where, you know, we don't really want none of that. We just want to, well, first and foremost, we just want the best for Arsenal.
Indeed.
And yeah, oddly enough, best for Arsenal. I see you talking about Gyokeres, and that's definitely the best for Arsenal.
Well, I'm going to ask you about that, and I'm going to get some thoughts from our chat box as well. And I thought what we would do as well, not just talk about Gyokeres, but kind of have a look at the to-do list, if you like, of Mikel Arteta and what we're expecting from him. What is the non-negotiables that we have, of course, for this summer as well. And more. If you want to check out Hooks' channel, of course, you can do that by going to the link in the description. People, make sure you do so. So let's start with the centre forward, because that seems to be kind of the key aspect. Is Gyokeres for you kind of the number one that you'd want to go for?
Gyokeres has been my number one for like the last 2 years. Like for me, he's the only one. Well, when I say the only one, don't get me wrong. There are other strikers that we can sign that can fulfill the role of a striker. But I think when you're talking about a guy who this season has like 71 goal contributions, and I think we can both agree to like some extent that a big problem for Arsenal is maybe not necessarily the volume of goals, but scoring goals in crucial moments that if someone just put it in the back of the net, we probably would have done a lot better than what we have done this season. I think he's the perfect piece to the puzzle. And then when you couple that with the fact that we're seeming to be heavily linked to someone of the quality of Rodrigo, I'm looking at our potential front line next season. It's not only looking like a front line that could destroy the Premier League, it's looking like a front line that could destroy Europe as well. So yeah, I don't know. Me personally, I've had enough of like potential. You know, like this person has the potential, and I'm also this transfer window. I think we need to look at best in class, best in slot that can actually improve the team now, because Arteta is gonna have he's got a big kind of season ahead of him next year. Arsenal,
massive season for Arteta. You know, I think that the yearning for a trophy could come to breaking point if Arsenal go yet another season. Yeah, I think for me this season, you can certainly point to a lot of things that have happened, but a lot of them are of our own making as well, with how short we left ourselves in both transfer windows. So when we talk about injuries, which have been beyond anything I've ever known to be as a fan, as an Arsenal supporter, for any season I've watched them, but we've left ourselves so short in windows that you only have to look within to see why it's been as damaging as it has been. And that cannot be afforded to happen. I don't want to hear Mikel Arteta at the start of next season turning around and saying, we're short. You know, we're short here, we're short there. We cannot be that's just inexcusable after 3 transfer windows we've had to address this point going into this one. Because a lot of the discussion around Gyokeres Hooks is kind of around the penalties that he does score within the number of goals that he scores. 95 goals in 100 games is, you know, ridiculous. And beyond just the penalties, some people like to highlight, I think fairly, that he's playing for the best team in a league that isn't necessarily anywhere close to the level of what the Premier League is. People also will highlight Gyokeres' aerial ability, perhaps not being as strong. I think of those 95 goals, only 4 of them are headers, which is kind of mad, considering, of course, Arsenal are a team that really do thrive on the idea of balls into the box in this current system. So when you hear kind of those restrictions around him, what does that make you feel about the idea of him signing for Arsenal still?
I mean, I know that we're not really known for getting penalties, you know, at Arsenal. You know, we're not We're not really favored in that sense, but you still have to score the penalties. Like that's the thing. I mean, if you think about like a lot of like the better strikers in history, like they've usually been really good at scoring penalties as well. You know, it all comes down to like, you know, that mental side, like how you handle pressure and your ability to finish and your ability to score. Like it doesn't turn me off at all. And the argument about the strongest team in a lesser league, I always say, okay, if that's the case, why doesn't everyone in that lesser league get the numbers that he does? His numbers are actually insane. Like his numbers are not normal. It's not normal to have 95 goals in 100 games. That's not normal anywhere. So I would prefer to look at the likes of someone like Haaland, who, you know, he was absolutely killing it in a lesser league. And he came over to the Prem and was able to replicate his form from another league in this league. I see no reason why Gyokeres can't do the same. Gyokeres, he performs in the Champions League. He performed last season. He's performed this season in the Champions League in terms to like his G and A. And obviously against us, like even though we beat Sporting 5-1, there was loads of times where he was giving Gabriel and Saliba a very, very difficult time. That's just the type of, he's a bully. Like, yeah, okay, maybe not aerially, but we have other people that can cover that. You know, we have Gabriel, who's like the Lord, the Lord of headers. So I don't think we need to nitpick like that. He also does it really well at the international level as well for Sweden. So I think if you look at the way he plays his game, another argument a lot of people say is, how often does he face low blocks? And Arsenal, we're a team that faces low blocks. Well, he's someone that would immediately improve our ability to transition as well, which would allow us to play in a different way. Because let's be honest, I feel like a lot of the teams in the Premier League, especially, are getting accustomed to how we play football. So we should try and switch it up and add in a different sort of dimension to the way that we play. And then there's always Europe. Imagine a striker like Gyokeres in the Champions League, where everybody plays to their strengths. We haven't faced a low block in the Champions League. I mean, maybe you could argue Inter Milan, but I would, or Atalanta, but I would argue they're Italian teams, so they're naturally more defensive. I don't think it's them purposefully setting up a low block. Yeah, so I don't know. I think that sometimes we just need to not galaxy brain it, you know, and not do the 5,000 IQ and the tactical stuff, and just look at the guy's numbers and go, wow, even if he gets half, that's the funny thing. He doesn't need to get 71 G8 at Arsenal. He just needs to get half. And I have more than enough confidence that he'd be able to do that.
I think that what's interesting as well is when you look at moments in Arsenal's seasons where we have looked to transition. There was a point in the game against Liverpool, actually, where we broke on the counter and we had Trossard up there. And at no point did it look like we were going to be any threat with the pace and the speed of the transition. There was points against PSG as well, where we got a turnover, Moreno's up there, and you're thinking, if we pass this through, Marquinhos or Pacho have got the easiest time in mopping up any through balls because we just don't have the pace. Well, Viktor Gyokeres has got the speed, has got the power and the intent. I mean, all you need to do is have a look at some of his numbers. And if you go on FBref, obviously a lot of people make the mistake of looking at the percentiles on FBref and seeing he's got a lot of green, a lot of 99s. It's worth pointing out that the FBref kind of percentiles only compare him against teams and leagues outside of the top 5 in Europe. But you still can have a look at the individual numbers. And what I mean by that is if you have a look at his progressive carries, which are 4.11 per 90, Isak, for instance, has 2.76 per 90. Successful take-ons, Gyokeres has 1.83 per 90. Isak has 1.36 per 90. Touch in the attacking penalty area, Gyokeres has 9.08. Isak has 6.38. Now, there are the context, of course, of the different leagues that these two play in and the respective clubs that they play for. But I think these are still important numbers to look at in the context of what Gyokeres provides. I also think that people overanalyze players far, far, far too much. I've seen a lot of discussions about how Gyokeres drifts left and he moves into these spaces to move into the right area. The irony, of course, there being that actually we could do with a player who drifts more left at the centre forward position, because most of our attacks have come down that right-hand side with Ødegaard, Timber, and of course Bukayo Saka playing on that right-hand side. So we could do with somebody that does drift a little bit more. But just because the way he plays at Sporting, it's no guarantee that what we see there is what we're going to see at Arsenal, and how he moves and into Arsenal and what happens to him at Arsenal will be incredibly different. I mean, Declan Rice, we signed as £105 million number 6. He's not played the majority of his games the same way that he played games for West Ham. And the same could be said about any player that Arsenal go and sign. I think what you need to look at from the centre forward position in particular are 2 key things. One is their finishing ability, of which we know that Gyokeres has brilliant ball striking abilities. And secondly, for me, as we've just discussed there with Hooks, is the transition. How good he is in phases of play where we can counter a lot more effectively, where we can get the ball up the field. His hold-up play is good. It's not, I wouldn't describe it as elite level hold-up play, but it's certainly an aspect of his game that I imagine will improve greatly under our tutelage. So now we move on to the other areas. You've mentioned Rodrigo already there, Hooks, as kind of the wide player. Is he the standout for you? Other players, Nico Williams has been suggested. Antoine Semenyo has been talked about as well, of course. I'm sure there are others at the chat box are going to throw into, and you might even suggest yourself. But is Rodrigo the one that you're looking at and going, yeah, he's the guy?
Oh, yeah, most definitely. Like, so this is the thing. Rodrigo has now become a market opportunity. He's now become a market opportunity. It seems like all of the talk coming out of Spain is that he no longer wants to be at Real Madrid. He's annoyed at being like second fiddle, at least in the media spotlight, to the likes of Mbappe, to the likes of Bellingham. Obviously, he's actually naturally a left winger, so he's always played on the right for them. He's kind of been moved away from his more favored position because of the likes of Vinny, and it just shows that at Real Madrid they just trust in a lot of other players more so than him. Even though, in my personal opinion, I think he's a better footballer than Vinicius Jr. So I can only imagine it must be highly frustrating for him to be so far down the pecking order. He's probably thinking, I need to go somewhere and I need to become the number one in a team. And I feel like if you want to be in the spotlight, if you want to get like all of the media hype, there is no better team in the world for you to go to than Arsenal Football Club, Rodrigo, because you will join Arsenal and immediately you'll gain 1 million new followers on all of your socials. You will be spoken about literally every single day. There's no better place for you to be. This brother is class. He immediately upgrades everything at Arsenal. And it's something you said earlier about how, you know, maybe we need to start drifting to the left because we are quite unbalanced and we do a lot of the stuff on the right. It's I think personally, the fact that we are looking at a left winger and we're leading the race for a striker who used to be a left winger, so naturally drifts off the left, it just shows every intention of upgrading our other side of our attacking side of the pitch to bring that balance and not rely on Saka entirely. And then also Rodrigo, he's someone who can receive the ball at his feet. And he's also someone that can, you know, run the channels, run in behind, run off the shoulder. So that now creates, I guess, a new opportunity for the likes of Ødegaard, who a lot of people say, you know, a lot of his creativity has dwindled. And now I'm looking at like maybe you can play more like a 10 because you have more offensive threats who can do better with the ball and maybe see the passes that you want to make before you even want to make them. So I don't know. He's got high IQ. Don't get me wrong. There are other players that, you know, if we did get, it would be okay. I wouldn't really mind. Like you mentioned, Semenyo. For me, Lookman is another person I wouldn't mind. There's Liao.
We've been Gittins, see something in the chat box talking about as well.
Do you know what? Or even like, I don't know. I don't know how over the top Arsenal wants to go this season, but we have been linked to the likes of Rafinha before. You know, maybe one day he might want to route out. Maybe we can tempt him a route out of Barca. Maybe he wants to. I don't know, because he's kind of won the La Liga, you know, and maybe he sees Arsenal upgrading his team and go, oh, you know what? Maybe I also have a chance of winning European trophies at Arsenal. So it may become a more, I guess, attractive proposition. So there's loads of players that we could go for on the left wing. But I think if we want to make a statement, well, not we, because I have no involvement in who we sign, but if Arsenal want to make a statement not only to the rivals in the league, but to all of the fans as well, and say, hey, look, we really want to go for something this season, I think Rodrigo's the guy. We also need to take into consideration, it's not just us that's upgrading. It looks like Manchester City are going, yep, we're doing all we can to get back on our perch. So naturally, I feel like we need to go for the better players to not be leapfrogged by Man City again. So there's a lot to consider. There is a lot to consider.
I think there's a really interesting comparison with the Rodrigo signing that I would make, and that's the Alexis Sanchez scenario that happened at Arsenal previously. Alexis Sanchez, when he was at Barcelona, of course, was a key figure in that Pep Guardiola side with Lionel Messi, of course, and Pedro that was there. But then they brought in Luis Suarez and they brought in Neymar, and Alexis Sanchez kind of went back into the bench kind of period, and they had a front three very famously of Messi, Suarez, and Neymar. And I look at now that scenario at Real Madrid where you've got a player like Rodrigo who is, you know, looking really to be behind some of those key figures that are in Real Madrid. You've got Arda Güler, of course, coming through as well. Brahim Diaz is still there, and I think there's going to be a keenness from Real Madrid to potentially add more forward players after they've already added Mbappe, with Vini Jr. taking a lot of the spotlight. The chat box have been very keen on telling me that Rodrigo is far more of a left-sided player anyway than a right-sided player. And obviously he only plays mainly on the right because of the fact that Vini Jr. is playing on the left. So I think there is potentially quite an interesting comparison there with an historic transfer that Arsenal made, who opportunistically grabbed hold of one of the most exciting players on the European scene because, of course, his stature at the club that he was at, one of the most elite clubs in Europe, had kind of fallen away somewhat. So I think it's an interesting one. I agree with a lot of the chat box are saying in terms of some of the other options. Nico Williams, as we've talked about a hell of a lot, would be great. David says Rafinha. Unfortunately, David, you're never going to go anywhere near him anymore. He's very much ingrained at Barcelona after doing brilliant things, but was a player that Arteta and Edu really wanted. Unfortunately, that he, much preferred the move to Barca at the time, which couldn't really fault him for at that point. But yeah, Rodrigo is one of those players, I think, who's grown in stature amongst Arsenal fans' minds this season. The other player, of course, that Arsenal look to already be landing hooks is Martin Zubimendi. So it seems on that to-do list that both Arteta and Andrea Berta have got a tick is coming quite soon. You seem to be quite happy about this one.
Yeah. Okay, I'm happy, but I'm still very cautious because Zubimendi is a bit of a bad bee. Yeah, he's he said he's messed us around in the past once already. And he more recently messed around Liverpool. So yeah. He's one of those players that until I see him lifting up the shirt like this, I'm always going to be a bit cautious around whether he actually is coming to us or not. But in terms of him actually coming, I like the option. Now, I think he's someone who would fit very, very easily, not only just into like Mikel Arteta's system, but into any system that heavily relies on playing out from the back, because he can receive the ball in deep areas and then he can progress it. He is someone, he's very similar to Partey in the sense that he can receive the ball in deeper areas, which allows other midfielders to play higher up, and he can start building up from the back. He can also find a lot of those line-breaking passes from deeper areas. We've seen him do really good things at international level as well. Even look in the Euro final. When he came on for Rodrigo, a lot of people would argue he looks better than Rodrigo in that final. A lot of people are calling him the natural heir to Rodrigo. And also, well, I'm saying Rodri. My bad. Even though I think it
is Rodrigo, to be fair. He just gets called Rodrigo.
Yeah, I'm actually speaking like I know him. So Rodri. So even Manchester City showed a bit of interest in him as well, because I think a lot of people in football can actually acknowledge the fact that he is probably the next in line to be the person that kind of fulfills that role, at least in the Spanish national team. So I think it's a very good signing. I, however, do not think he is better than Partey. So I would still want to keep Partey and have Zubimendi there as well, just for squad depth. Like, obviously, Jorginho is 100% going. And that's how I kind of see Zubimendi. I see him taking the slot in the squad of Jorginho.
Yeah.
And then there being rotation between Partey and Zubimendi going forward. And then I guess it comes down to, when a ball's been kicked, who's actually playing better. And then that is the person that will most likely be the starter. But I think it's a very good signing. We can't pretend that he's not a good player. We can't pretend that he's not one of the most sought after midfielders in world football. The only thing that is a bit concerning, and you did bring up a comment, is the homesick element. But hey, there's a risk with every signing, and I mean, it's a risk that I'm willing to take. It's not too expensive. I mean, Mikel Arteta's there, Erdegaard's there, Marino's there. So there's a lot of
Spanish speakers. Yeah. He's played with Erdegaard before. He plays on the international scene with Marino and Raya. We may end up getting Nico Williams. You never know. That could be another Spanish player, or a La Liga player. Rodrigo, of course, another La Liga player potentially coming into the group as well. I'm not worried about that. I think Arsenal is an incredibly kind of welcoming group to come into. I think it was who is it that did an interview recently? I think it was Martinelli, actually. I think he was in the press conference before Real Madrid speaking about how he kind of figures as a senior player, having been at the club. I mean, there's not many players that have been in this current squad, been at the club longer than Martinelli, despite the fact he's still a very young player. And he talks often about kind of having to be a senior figure and welcoming the new players in. And I think that, I don't really have any concerns about the Zubimendi homesickness thing. I think it's been blown up a bit. He's a player, of course, that's very loyal to La Real, but recognises at his mid-20s age that he's at now that he needs to make this next step. This is the next step in his career. He's been very convinced by the Arteta project. He stayed. I don't know how true it is about kind of the last summer and why he decided to U-turn on Liverpool. And we know that Arsenal have had interest in the player for a long time. Theorising on that front, you could argue that maybe that influence, that presence of Arsenal's interest over a period of time could have factored in the decision, or maybe instead he just decided to stay on for another season with Real Sociedad to help them after, of course, they wanted to get back into European competition again. And of course, with Athletic Club being as competitive as they are, their main rivals in the Basque region. Now, the backup goalkeeper one is quite an interesting area, Hooks, because obviously at the moment, Arsenal are very keen on Juan Garcia, the Espanyol keeper, but there's suggestions that he could cost Arsenal around £20 million, which is a lot of money for a number two. Some Arsenal fans would think that's better spent elsewhere, and you can bring back, say, Carl Hein, who's been on loan in for Real Valladolid this season, and bring him into the fold. What do you make of the idea of spending a relatively big fee on a number two keeper when that maybe could go on other transfers?
I don't know. My stance would be that if spending this 20 to 30 million, which I don't think is a lot and shouldn't be a lot of money for a club the size of Arsenal, if that is going to impact your ability to spend in other places, then I wouldn't bother personally. Maybe look at next season. But from what I've heard about Garcia, is he's a very sought after goalkeeper. So it might be one of those occasions where Arteta and Arsenal want to pull the trigger now because they know the interest that he's going to get later on, and that could make a deal later on a lot more difficult. I haven't watched too much of Garcia, but everything I've heard about him is really good. And the only thing that I would be concerned about is do we run into another scenario with the Arsenal fan base like we did with Raya and Ramsdale, which was a very interesting time to say the least. So I would have concerns about, does that affect the morale of Raya? Does Raya start having similar thoughts to what Ramsdale had when Raya came in? Or is Raya happy with the competition, and will that actually make both goalkeepers better? Does Arteta in his mind have plans like, okay, maybe Raya, you're my Premier League goalkeeper, and Garcia, you'll be my Champions League goalkeeper, and then, you know, for the FA Cup and the League Cup, we kind of mix and match? Or is it? I don't know. I don't know what the plan is around Garcia, but if it's one of those scenarios where we're preparing really early for a new goalkeeper to come in, so we don't have to worry about it later. And hey, if it doesn't affect our ability to sign a striker, sign a left winger, sign another midfielder, because I believe we'll need another creative 10, then hey, I'm all happy. Go and grab him. Anything that makes our squad stronger, I really am for. And he would be another person that would kind of fit in really easily, because we do have quite the Spanish core. So, and with Zubamendi coming in as well, maybe there's someone else that can help him settle. He will immediately have a new friends group. So yeah, if we can do it without it impacting other areas, go for it. If not, maybe delay it.
Yeah, I mean, David Raya is 29 years of age. He'll be 30 in September. But I mean, for a goalkeeper, that's like mid-20s for an outfield player, really. It's not anything to be too, I think, concerned about. I think for Arteta and for Arsenal, they're very aware that, you know, there are times, especially with the injuries we've suffered, that if we were to lose David Raya, if we'd have lost David Raya this season and Neto had to be in goal, I had very little confidence, you know, in him. You know, with all due respect, I was in Girona, I watched that performance, and I thought, my goodness, we can't afford David Raya to get injured. So you can understand why there's a keenness from their side. There have been reports that Andrea Berta is less keen on spending quite that significant amount of money on a keeper, and would rather it went elsewhere. There are restrictions, of course, with FFP and PSR that Arsenal are aware of. They don't want to fly close to those barriers. That's certainly my understanding. They want to stay well within those restrictions and don't want to fall into any potential pitfalls that come alongside those. So if it is that they end up going for another player, I imagine that might be the primary reason, as well as the fact that Garcia has again this season developed even to a higher standard than he was last season. So he may be looking and thinking, why would I go to Arsenal to be a number 2 and barely play when I can go to another top European side and potentially be a starter, which I think has to be considered. We're at 37 minutes into this, and I want to get some questions from the chat box as well. So we'll start with Cole. It says, absurd thought, but what if Raya was to get a big injury? Wouldn't it be great to have a reliable option in goal? We've kind of discussed that just now, Cole, but I mean, I didn't really let you go and riff off on that, Hook. So let me know what your thoughts are there.
100 million%, because without revealing my age too much, I am old enough to remember when Lehmann got sent off and Almunia came on, and it all went down the drain. So yeah. I do think that we need a solid backup, someone, not only just a solid backup, but someone who's got the same qualities, so the way that we play is not really affected. Like, it would be no point having like a really good backup goalkeeper that can't play with the ball at their feet, for example, because that is kind of how we play the game. So someone like Garcia probably works really well. But I am someone who's always touching wood, pause, that Raya never gets injured, because he is such a big part of how we play, the way that we play. So yeah, that's, I don't want Hein. I don't want Hein. And like you said, the Girona game, I still can't believe that Neto dived and tried to save the ball outside the box. I can't. Yeah. I honestly cannot believe that. So we definitely do need someone of higher quality as our backup goalkeeper. I don't quite think that Tommy Setford is ready as well. So
no. I think he'll go on loan next season, to be honest, Setford. There's suggestions that Arsenal as well made a 1.25 million bid for a Chelsea youth goalkeeper, actually, recently. I'll see if I can find that. But that kind of shows you maybe that Arsenal are not. They brought in Lucas Nygaard, you'll remember at the start of last season as well, another youth goalkeeper. So there is a feeling Simon Collins leaving. Instead of reporting that Alexi Rojas has been offered a new contract as well. So it's I think it was Fabrizio Romano actually reported that that line about the Arsenal-Chelsea goalkeeper bid. But it seems to be a position that Arsenal aren't entirely settled on. And it seems to be a position that will continue to be kind of, I think, looking at into the long term. But yeah, we'll wait and see. The name of that goalkeeper, by the way, was England under 18's Freddie Bernal. Chelsea rejected a 1.25 million bid from Arsenal. They're clearing their position. They want to keep Bernal, and several other clubs are also interested. So there you go on that front. Thomas asks, who are some fullback targets you'd expect us to have a look at? It feels inevitable, but I've only really heard about Yoel Hato. Now, we've, of course, hooks that Zinchenko looks like he could be going this summer. Tierney, we know, is already leaving. Calafiori's injury record has not been good. Tomiyasu's injury record is not good. Ben White is still seemingly recovering from his issue, which means he's not looked fully fit for quite some time. Jurriën Timber's played a lot of football after recovering from a serious knee injury himself. I think a fullback is certainly something that Arsenal need to look at next season, potentially a versatile one. So in answer to Thomas's question, have you got any in mind, or is it mainly Yoel Hato as well that's been on the brain?
Hato's up there for me. Definitely up there for me, because obviously he's like Timber. He can also cover centre-back as well. So that kind of plays into our whole like players being versatile. But someone that I'm thinking could be a very good market opportunity is Ait Nouri. I think Ait Nouri is someone who would be able to play that inverted left back role at Arsenal to a T. Like, don't get me wrong, I know he does have his defensive frailties, but we all know that our left back, the role is more so about how you affect the game going forward, more so than what you do going the other way. We move into a back three whenever the left back or right back does invert, so I don't think it would cause too many issues defensively. But outside of him, I would like to see Arsenal throw their hat in for Gyokeres as well. I think Gyokeres is one of the best left backs in the league. So if Bournemouth are willing to sell, if the price is right, let's throw our hat in, because we can't. One thing I would like to see Arsenal start doing, and maybe it's a bit tricky to do, but we need to not let Liverpool and Man City get targets they want without challenge. If that makes sense. Like, we need to be challenging these guys and make it difficult for them to sign their main targets if they are players that could also fit into the way that we play as well. So yeah, throw our hat in for Gyokeres. Why not? Right back, I'm less concerned, because I think that Timber and White is more than enough. Maybe build up a youngster from the youth academy to be the next in line. But yeah, those are probably a few names that I would look at personally.
I think there's a good question in here as well, and I agree with you, by the way, about Ait Nouri. I've been very impressed with his work. Gyokeres, I think, would be difficult, because I think he'd want guarantees about starting, and that's the difficulty that Arsenal have at left back, because of course Miles Lewis-Skelly's been so good. You've got Calafiori as well, but I think Ait Nouri is a really good shout, actually. Let me find the question. Where was the question that I had a second ago? It was asking, here we go. Harry says, from squad building and financial perspective, if we were to sign a striker, what would happen to Havertz? It's not a great look to bench our highest earner. So do you see him being sold? What do you think about this one?
So I think Havertz would become one of the best squad players in world football. And to me, see, this is the thing. Like, there's been a lot of people have had their complaints about how much Kai Havertz earns, and the fact that he is our highest earner. But it's all relative, right? Because once Saka gets a new contract, once Saliba gets a new contract, once Gabriel gets a new contract, once the likes of Gyokeres comes in, Rodrigo, if he does come in, I can only imagine he would probably go on more than what, or close to what, Havertz is on. There's going to become a scenario where he's no longer our highest earner. And then it's then a non-issue, right? Because we then don't have our highest earner on the bench. And I've heard, gotta be careful. I've heard
where?
I've heard, I can't remember the source off the top of my head.
I'll look it up while you're talking. Go on.
I did read it on the internet that apparently there's plans for Havertz to move back into the midfield.
Okay.
or at least play a role back in the midfield.
Yeah. No, I don't think that's controversial.
So then it kind of becomes the thing about Havertz that I'm just gonna throw it out there. I like Havertz, and a lot of people don't like me because I like Havertz. I feel like he's a player that's just very intelligent and understands how to play in a lot of roles. So a manager like Arteta in a system like Arsenal, where it's less about the position you play and more about the understanding of a variety of positions, so you can fluidly and freely interchange and move when you're on the pitch and still fulfill a role. He's the perfect player to have. So I wouldn't want to get rid of him. But then it comes down to the question of, does Havertz want to be a squad player? And if he doesn't want to be a squad player, and we are looking to bring in players better than him, then maybe we might have to offload him. But hey, that's a decision for Berta and Arteta to come to. But I would be surprised if Havertz left this season.
Yeah, I don't think he will. Arteta, to my knowledge, I wrote a piece on this yesterday. Arteta's a big fan of the guy still. Just because Arsenal want to sign a centre forward does not mean that Havertz's future is in doubt. He's a versatile player. He can play centre forward. He can play second striker. He can play as a 10. He can play left 8, as he has done. And I know that there's been games where he's played in midfield and we've not been particularly enthralled by his performances. But I think, put a Zubimendi with him, put a proper centre forward up top as well. I think we would see differences in his performances. It's hard to go off what we've seen in those positions, but Havertz remains, despite being injured from February, our top scorer. Yeah. And it's, as John points out here, Havertz in midfield at Leverkusen, he was brilliant as well. Like when he actually got that move to Chelsea from playing in the majority of his games as an attacking midfielder, as more of a younger player. So he still remains only in his mid-20s. Hopefully,
and he can play left back.
Yeah. I don't know about that. I think Julian Nagelsmann might regret that. Anthony asks a fair question. Says, Tom, City are worrying me right now. They're going for some top midfielders like Reinders, Florian Wirtz as well, who has been heavily linked. I mean, I don't think this is a surprise, Anthony. City remain obviously one of the biggest spending clubs. And while, of course, all the stuff in the background is going on, they haven't got really any reason to not continue spending until they're told not to. So what do you make of this, Hooks? Is City concerning you with those types of deals for players like Reinders and Wirtz?
This one here especially hurts my heart. Like, Tijani Reinders is one of my favorite midfielders, and I've wanted this guy to be in my midfield for the last 2 years, 2-3 years. Every time I watch this guy, he just seems like such an Arteta player. Like the way that he keeps the ball ticking, the way that he's constantly moving, the way that he's kind of connecting play and allowing other players to get involved. He's a very intelligent player. I don't know why I know why we're not throwing our hat in for this guy, because at least under Arteta, it seems very clear that Declan Rice is our left eight, which I'm happy with, because I from early I kind of understood why he's the left eight. I can see it more, and it was more of a case of Declan Rice just needs to develop, at least in open play, his attacking capabilities, which I feel he's done. But it would be nice to have someone like a Reinders. Now imagine Man City's midfield next season could be Rodri, Reinders, and Wirtz. That is a very, very scary proposition. I'll be completely honest. So I am worried. Very, very worried. However, I'm hoping it doesn't go through.
Well, City are a bit inevitable, unfortunately. So we'll see. I did see some reports yesterday suggesting that Bayer Leverkusen might end up holding out for as much as 150 million euros. I see that in the chat, actually. Mo just said that as well. 150 million euros for Wirtz, and Bayern Munich are said to be keen on bidding around 100 million euros. It shows you the level of money that it would take to get a player of that caliber out. And I've had conversations. I remember we had Drew on the show, actually. Our good friend Drew and a regular Bundesliga watcher, was not keen on the idea. So be interested to see how Wirtz ends up getting on. I think he works very well in that Bundesliga system at Leverkusen. How it would work for City, we don't know. Omar Marmoush has been pretty decent this season, obviously coming over from Frankfurt. So it'll be intriguing to see how Wirtz would get on wherever he does end up. Last couple of questions before we end the show. Malcolm says, are you concerned that if we would sign Viktor Gyokeres, that a big part of his game that made him so good in the SL, the transition opportunities, would be lost as our build-up is much slower? I guess just to preface before you come in on this, Hooks, is that the idea is that adding a player like Zubimendi and like Gyokeres speeds up our build-up as well and hopefully speed it up. But it's a fair question to ask, so Hooks, go for it.
I think the reason that our build-up is as slow as it is because we don't have a Gyokeres in the 9. Like if you think about it, even when we was playing with Havertz is a player that, hey, I want ball to feet. Don't get me wrong, he will challenge in the air, but he's naturally a player I want ball to feet. Same with Marino, I want ball to feet. So it seems like same with Saka. Saka is I want ball to feet. A lot of our players, even somehow, Martinelli has developed into a player, at least on the left wing, I want ball to feet. Obviously, when he plays more centrally, he's more so looking to run off the shoulder. But a lot of our forward line and our midfielders want the ball to their feet, which naturally makes our build-up as slow as it is. But I feel like having a player like Gyokeres up top would increase our quality of our transition, because now you have someone that not only is running off the shoulder, but he just always wants to be in those central areas. He always wants to be in an area where he can score a goal. And look, there's been many a times where, we have tried to transition, but then either one of Martinelli or Saka are the furthest up the field and there's no one in the box. Gyokeres solves that, because when we are building up, when we are breaking away, Gyokeres is going to be keeping up with the pace of the wingers. So there's always going to be an option in the box. And like you said as well, someone like Zubimendi increases the pace of our build-up as well. So I don't think it's as much of an issue as a lot of people are making out. I think it actually solves the problem of our slow build-up rather than make it any slower, if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense. I think that's fair. I think the idea is that, you can't just template on a player into the current way of playing. The idea is that we bring in players to change how we play as well, as much as we improve them and change their game. It's not, the system doesn't have to be the default. The system can be malleable. It can change. It can improve. So yeah, as we talked about earlier in the show, there are times where Marino or Trossard being there, even Havertz, doesn't necessarily have the greatest level of rapid speed. He's not slow by any means, but he's not a rapid player as I would describe a Gyokeres to be. He certainly has the pace and power and kind of progression to beat so many players when he's on the charge. And I think adding those types of players in, adding Zubimendi, who, one of Partey's aspects of Partey's game that has diminished in the last couple of seasons has been his progressive passing. It's not been as strong as it was in his first 3 seasons at the club. And Zubimendi, again, I think comes in to add that and add that playmaker type role from deep, which I think we have lacked to a degree, and I think would also help us in those scenarios. So yeah, I think there's the opportunity to do that. There was an interesting actually video that went out, I think, on Tifo yesterday, that was all about Cole Palmer and Martin Ødegaard, because a lot of people ask the question when we're on the transition, why do players like Ødegaard or why do players like Palmer sometimes slow down, turn around and play a certain ball when we would want them to be a little bit more progressive. There was a really good video actually explaining the analysis behind that, which I would recommend giving a watch to if you can find it. Anyway, that brings us to the close of today's show. I'll finish off just with a couple of member comments that have come in. Who's been a member now for 27 months, Sweating Merlot. Brilliant. More than 2 years of us. Second Yacht says Sweating Merlot. I think we're a little far away from that, mate. But, dream big. That's what I say. And Paul, who's just been a member now for 15 months on the channel, says, let's be respectful, which I think the show has been a brilliant example of. Hooks, thank you so much for your time, mate. I really appreciate you coming on the show. I'm glad that we've blessed things, and it's a day. It's a 24 hours of learning, is what I would describe it as. So thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, maybe I can be evidence that not every troll is a troll. I think I've behaved pretty well on the channel. I've enjoyed my time here.
You've smashed it, man. You've been good.
The chat has been quite welcoming. So no, big up everyone locked in. Just make sure that you are liking Tom's video and you are subscribing to Tom's channel, because hey man, that's the dream. We're all trying to get as big as we can. Pause. Yeah, so thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
No, of course, pleasure's all mine, mate. The link, of course, to Hooks' channel is down in today's video description. Make sure you give him a follow. If you like morning shows, Hooks is on the vibe as well. So he does plenty of those. So make sure you head over there, and it's a good place to follow. So thanks again, mate. And I'm sure it won't be the last time we've seen you. So for sure. I saw a few people in the chat saying that we should do more kind of shows with guests on in the mornings, not just me. So maybe it's something that we look into for next season. But thank you to you all for listening. Thank you for the kind comments I can see you throwing in the chat box as well. Now, it's been over 1,500 of you watching at some points live, which is brilliant. So thank you for that. And I'll be back, of course, as always, tomorrow morning, bright and early, to round up any other chaos that goes on today. I imagine that it will start with Viktor and it will end with Gyokeres at some point. So you can be sure of that over the regularity in the coming days. We'll see you soon. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy, respectful, and as always, up the Arsenal.